Picture this: a hero who's got two fathers, slays a monster that's half man, half bull, and then makes the worst relationship decision in mythology. Meet Theseus, the guy who had everything going for him until he spectacularly messed it all up. His story has more plot twists than a soap opera and enough family drama to make reality TV look tame. Most people know Theseus as the hero who killed the Minotaur, but that's just scratching the surface of this wild tale. We're talking about a man whose birth involved divine intervention, whose journey to Athens was basically an ancient version of a boss rush video game, and whose tragic ending was entirely his own fault. Buckle up, because Theseus's story is about to take you on a ride through ancient Greece's most dramatic family saga. Theseus's origin story begins with his mother, Princess Aethra of Troezen. She caught the eye of King Aegeus of Athens, who was desperately seeking an heir. The problem? Aegeus was cursed by the oracle at Delphi with a cryptic prophecy about not loosening his wineskin until he returned home. Translation: no kids until you get back to Athens. But Aegeus couldn't resist Aethra's charm. They spent one passionate night together in Troezen. Here's where things get mythologically messy. That same night, Poseidon, god of the sea, also visited Aethra in her dreams. So technically, Theseus had two fathers, one mortal king and one divine deity. Talk about complicated paternity. Before leaving Troezen, Aegeus performed a crucial test setup. He placed his sword and sandals under a massive boulder. Then he told Aethra that if she bore a son, the boy should try to lift the rock when he came of age. If successful, he should bring the items to Athens as proof of his royal heritage. Years passed, and young Theseus grew up strong and clever. His grandfather, King Theseus of Troezen, raised him without revealing his true parentage. The boy showed remarkable strength and intelligence from early on. Even his name, meaning to set down or to establish, hinted at his future role as a founder and leader. When Theseus turned 16, Aethra finally revealed the truth about his father. She led him to the boulder that had remained unmoved for years. Other young men had tried and failed to budge it. But Theseus? He lifted that rock like it was made of foam. The sword and sandals fit perfectly, confirming his royal bloodline. Now came the big decision. How to reach Athens? Aethra begged him to take the safe sea route. The land path was notorious for bandits, monsters, and murderers who preyed on travelers. But Theseus had heard stories of his cousin Heracles and his heroic labors. He wanted to make his own name as a hero in training. Against his mother's wishes, Theseus chose the dangerous overland route to Athens. He figured if he was going to claim his birthright, he might as well earn some hero points along the way. Little did he know, this decision would transform him from unknown prince to legendary monster slayer. The young hero set off with his father's sword at his side and divine strength coursing through his veins. His journey would become the stuff of legends, with each encounter more deadly than the last. But hey, no pressure for a teenager trying to prove himself, right? Theseus's road trip to Athens was like playing an ancient Greek version of a survival horror game. His first encounter happened near Epidaurus, where he met Periphetes, also known as Club Bearer. This bandit had a nasty habit of smashing travelers' heads with his bronze club. Periphetes expected another easy victim, but Theseus turned the tables and killed him with his own weapon. The second challenge came at the Isthmus of Corinth. Here lurked Cineas, nicknamed Pinebender for his signature killing method. He would tie victims between two bent pine trees, then release them for a gruesome death. Cineas probably thought he was being creative with his murder techniques. Theseus gave him a taste of his own medicine, literally bending him between his beloved trees. Next up was the Crommyonian sow, a massive wild pig that terrorized the countryside near Crommyon. This wasn't your average farm animal. This beast was said to be the offspring of monsters Echidna and Typhon. Theseus hunted down the sow and killed it, proving he could handle both human and animal threats. The fourth encounter brought Theseus face to face with Siren, a bandit who controlled a narrow cliff path. Siren would force travelers to wash his feet, then kick them off the cliff to be devoured by a giant sea turtle below. When Siren demanded foot-washing services from Theseus, The young hero decided to give him a different kind of kick, right off his own cliff. Challenge number 5 involved Cercyon, the wrestling king of Eleusis. This guy forced all passers-by into wrestling matches to the death. Cercyon had never lost a match and probably thought Theseus would be another easy victory. But our hero's divine strength proved superior, and Cercyon became the first wrestling champion to lose his title permanently. The final and most notorious enemy was Procrustes, the Stretcher. This twisted innkeeper would offer hospitality to weary travelers, then fit them to his bed using horrific methods. Too short, he'd stretch you on a rack. Too tall, he'd chop off your limbs. Procrustes clearly had some serious hospitality issues. Theseus solved this problem by giving the innkeeper a taste of his own bed treatment. By the time Theseus reached the outskirts of Athens, his reputation had spread like wildfire. Word of the young hero who single-handedly cleared the dangerous road had reached the city. People were calling him the new Heracles, comparing his 6 victories to his cousin's famous labors. Theseus had successfully transformed from unknown teenager to legendary hero in just one journey. He'd proven that divine blood ran through his veins and that he had both the strength and cunning to back up his royal claims. The road to Athens was now safe for travelers, thanks to one determined young man with daddy issues and a point to prove. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The same dangerous path that was supposed to deter Theseus from reaching Athens actually became his ticket to fame. Sometimes the hard way really is the best way, especially when you've got the gods on your side. But little did Theseus know, his biggest challenges still lay ahead. Athens held family drama that would make his bandit-slaying adventure look like a warm-up exercise. The real test of his character was about to begin in his father's palace. When Theseus finally reached Athens, he expected a hero's welcome and instant recognition from his father, King Aegeus. Instead, he got the ancient equivalent of "new phone, who dis?" Aegeus had no idea this young hero was his son, and the royal court was buzzing with rumors about the mysterious warrior who'd cleaned up the roads. Things got complicated fast because Aegeus wasn't ruling alone. His wife was none other than Medea. Yes, the same Medea who'd helped Jason steal the Golden Fleece and later murdered her own children in revenge. This woman had serious trust issues and a talent for making potions that could kill or cure. Having her as a stepmother was like playing Russian roulette with magical ingredients. Medea immediately sensed that Theseus posed a threat to her position and her own son's inheritance. She was a master manipulator who'd survived multiple kingdoms by staying one step ahead of political rivals. The last thing she wanted was some unknown hero showing up and disrupting her carefully laid plans for power. So Medea did what she did best. She started plotting. She convinced Aegeus that this new hero might be a threat to his throne, possibly sent by political enemies to overthrow him. Fear was her weapon of choice, and she wielded it expertly. Aegeus, already paranoid about succession and challengers, began to see Theseus as a potential assassin rather than a savior. The sorceress proposed a solution that would eliminate the threat permanently. She prepared a cup of wine mixed with deadly poison and suggested they invite the young hero to a royal feast. The plan was simple: toast the hero's achievements, watch him drink, and problem solved. Medea probably thought she was being clever, but she was about to learn that family connections run deeper than political schemes. The fateful dinner took place in the great hall of the palace. Theseus sat at the royal table, unaware that his wine cup contained enough poison to kill a dozen men. As custom demanded, he was about to draw his sword to cut the meat for the feast. The moment he unsheathed the blade, everything changed. Aegeus recognized the sword instantly, the same weapon he'd hidden under the boulder 16 years ago. His eyes widened as he looked at the sandals on Theseus's feet, the ones he'd left as tokens of his visit to Troezen. In that split second, the king realized he'd been about to murder his own son. Aegeus knocked the poisoned cup from Theseus's hands, sending it crashing to the floor. The wine hissed and bubbled as it ate through the stone, proving just how deadly Medea's concoction had been. The entire court gasped as the king embraced the young hero, declaring him his rightful heir and prince of Athens. Medea's face went white, not from shock, but from rage. Her carefully planned murder had failed spectacularly, and now she faced the wrath of a father who'd almost lost his son to her schemes. She knew there was no talking her way out of this one. Without waiting for judgment, she grabbed her belongings and fled Athens in her dragon-drawn chariot. The recognition scene was everything Theseus had dreamed of during his dangerous journey. Finally, he had his father's acceptance, a place in the royal family, and the respect of the Athenian people. The hero who'd cleared the roads was now Prince Theseus, heir to one of Greece's most powerful city-states. But joy in the palace was short-lived. Athens faced a terrible crisis that would test the new prince's courage like nothing before. Every 7 years, the city was forced to send a horrific tribute to King Minos of Crete, 7 young men and 7 young women to feed the Minotaur. The time for the next tribute was approaching, and Athenian families were already mourning their children who might be chosen. This wasn't just a political problem. It was a humanitarian nightmare that had haunted Athens for years. The selection process was like a death lottery that no one wanted to win. Theseus looked at his father's troubled face and the despair of his new subjects. He'd come to Athens to claim his birthright, but now he realized that true leadership meant more than just wearing a crown. It meant being willing to risk everything for the people who depended on you. The young prince was about to make a decision that would either cement his reputation as a hero or end his story before it really began. The Minotaur was waiting in Crete, and Theseus was already planning his next impossible mission. Some heroes just can't resist a good monster-slaying challenge. Athens had a dark secret. Every 7 years, the city had to send a horrifying tribute to King Minos of Crete. 14 young people, 7 boys and 7 girls, were shipped off as human sacrifices. Their destination, the belly of the legendary Minotaur. This beast lived in an impossible maze called the Labyrinth, designed by the master craftsman Daedalus himself. The tribute time had come again. Families wept in the streets as lots were drawn. Their children faced certain death in the most terrifying way possible. But Theseus had other plans. He stepped forward and volunteered to be one of the 14. King Aegeus was horrified. He'd just found his son, and now Theseus wanted to throw his life away. Theseus had confidence that bordered on arrogance. He believed he could kill the Minotaur and end this nightmare forever. His father tried everything to change his mind, but Theseus was determined. Before leaving, they made a pact. If Theseus survived, he would change the ship's black sails to white ones on the return journey. This would signal his victory from afar. The ship arrived in Crete carrying its cargo of Athenian youth. King Minos welcomed them with cold satisfaction, another batch of victims for his monster. But something unexpected happened at the palace. Princess Ariadne, Minos's own daughter, caught sight of the handsome Athenian prince. Love struck her like lightning. Apparently, good looks run in the family of heroes. Ariadne couldn't bear to watch Theseus die. She secretly approached him with an offer he couldn't refuse. She would help him navigate the labyrinth and defeat the Minotaur. In return, he had to promise to take her back to Athens as his wife. Theseus agreed without hesitation. After all, he needed all the help he could get. The princess revealed the labyrinth's secret. The maze was designed to be impossible to escape, even if you somehow survived the Minotaur. Daedalus had built it with countless dead ends and false passages. Ariadne gave Theseus a ball of thread, his lifeline in the maze. He would unroll it as he went deeper, then follow it back to freedom. The day of reckoning arrived. Theseus entered the labyrinth with the thread tied to the entrance. The other Athenian youths watched helplessly as he disappeared into the stone corridors. Inside, the maze was a nightmare of echoing passages and bone-scattered floors. The stench of death filled the air from previous victims. Deeper and deeper Theseus went, following the thread behind him like a breadcrumb trail. The walls seemed to close in with each turn. Strange sounds echoed through the passages, heavy breathing, scraping hooves, and low growls. Then he found the center of the maze, and there it was, the Minotaur in all its horrifying glory. The creature was exactly as terrifying as the stories claimed. It had the body of a massive man, but the head of a wild bull. Its eyes burned red with fury and hunger. The beast had been fed human flesh for years, and it was ready for its next meal. The Minotaur charged at Theseus with incredible speed and power. What followed was the fight of Theseus's life. The Minotaur was stronger, but Theseus was faster and smarter. He dodged the creature's attacks and struck back with precision. The battle raged through the chamber, with both fighters giving everything they had. Finally, Theseus managed to grab the beast by its horns and break its neck with his bare hands. The hero had done the impossible. The Minotaur was dead. Theseus followed his thread back through the maze, emerging victorious to the amazement of everyone. The other Athenian youths cheered their savior. Even King Minos had to admit grudging respect for the prince who had slain his monster. But now came the tricky part, escaping Crete alive. Ariadne had prepared for this moment too. She helped Theseus and the other Athenians sneak to their ship under cover of darkness. They sailed away quickly, taking the princess with them as promised. Crete grew smaller behind them as they headed for home. Theseus had accomplished what seemed impossible. He'd ended the tribute forever and saved countless future victims. The ship made a stop at the island of Naxos to rest and resupply. Everyone was exhausted from their ordeal and desperate escape. They set up camp on the beach for the night. Ariadne fell asleep beside Theseus, dreaming of her new life in Athens. She had given up everything for love, her family, her kingdom, her entire world. But you know what they say about heroes and commitment issues. When morning came, Theseus made a decision that would haunt him forever. He looked at the sleeping princess who had saved his life and made a choice that revealed his darker nature. This is where our hero's story takes a shocking turn that nobody saw coming. Wait until you hear what Theseus did next. It's going to completely change how you see this so-called hero. Dawn broke over Naxos, and Theseus made the most controversial decision of his entire story. He quietly woke his crew and ordered them to prepare the ship for immediate departure. But he left one crucial person behind, Ariadne. The princess who had risked everything to save him was abandoned on the beach, still sleeping peacefully. Different versions of the myth try to explain this betrayal. Some say the god Dionysus appeared to Theseus in a dream, claiming Ariadne as his destined bride. Others suggest Theseus simply got cold feet about bringing a foreign princess home to Athens. The most brutal interpretation? He used her and dumped her, ancient ghosting at its worst. Ariadne woke up alone on the empty beach. Her ship was gone. Her savior had vanished. The woman who had betrayed her own father and kingdom for love found herself stranded on a deserted island. She screamed and wept, but only the waves answered her cries. In one night, she had lost everything: her home, her family, and the man she thought loved her. But the gods were watching this drama unfold. Dionysus, the god of wine and celebration, discovered the abandoned princess. Some say he had orchestrated the whole thing from the beginning. He fell in love with Ariadne and made her his divine wife. She became a goddess herself, ruling beside him in eternal happiness. At least someone got a happy ending from this mess. Meanwhile, Theseus sailed toward Athens, probably thinking he was pretty clever. His crew celebrated their victory over the Minotaur. They had saved their city and returned as heroes. But Theseus had forgotten something crucial: the signal he'd promised his father. In his excitement or guilt, he never changed the ship's sails from black to white. King Aegeus waited anxiously on the cliffs of Athens, watching the horizon every day. When he finally spotted the returning ship, his heart sank like a stone. The black sails could only mean one thing: his beloved son was dead. The grief hit him like a physical blow. He had found his heir only to lose him to the Minotaur's jaws. Overwhelmed by despair, the old king threw himself from the cliff into the sea below. The waters that claimed him would forever bear his name, the Aegean Sea. Aegeus died believing his son had failed, never knowing that Theseus had actually succeeded beyond all expectations. Talk about a communication failure with deadly consequences. Theseus arrived home to find his father dead and himself accidentally responsible. The hero who had slain monsters and saved Athens had killed his own father through carelessness. The irony was crushing. He had survived the Minotaur only to destroy what he'd fought to protect. His moment of triumph became his greatest tragedy. The guilt would follow Theseus for the rest of his life. He had abandoned the woman who saved him and caused his father's death through negligence. These weren't the actions of a noble hero. They revealed a flawed, selfish man beneath the legendary reputation. Even heroes, it seems, are capable of terrible mistakes. With Aegeus dead, Theseus automatically became king of Athens. He inherited the throne he had sought, but at a price he never wanted to pay. The crown felt heavy with the weight of his failures. His subjects celebrated their new king and the end of the Cretan tribute, not knowing the dark truth behind their salvation. But here's where the story gets even more complicated. Theseus would go on to have many more adventures as king, including battles with Amazons and journeys to the underworld. Yet the shadows of Naxos and his father's death would never leave him. Every future triumph would be tainted by the memory of his greatest failures. Wait until you see how these early mistakes shaped the rest of Theseus's reign, because his story is far from over, and the consequences of his actions are just beginning to unfold. Theseus finally got what he'd been working toward his whole life. The throne of Athens was his. He ruled with wisdom and strength, transforming the city into a major power. The guy who once fought bandits on dusty roads now held court in marble halls, but sitting on a throne wasn't enough for our restless hero. His first major adventure as king involved the Amazons. These fierce warrior women lived far to the north, in a land where men were basically just baby-making machines. Talk about role reversal. Theseus sailed there with his ships and warriors. Some say he went to trade, others claim it was pure conquest. Either way, he came back with more than just stories. The Amazon queen Antiope caught his eye immediately. She was tall, muscular, and could shoot arrows with deadly precision. Theseus either kidnapped her or she fell in love with him voluntarily. The myths can't agree. What matters is that she became his wife and bore him a son named Hippolytus. For a while, Athens had an Amazon queen walking its streets. But the other Amazons weren't happy about losing their queen. They launched a massive invasion of Athens itself. Picture hundreds of warrior women storming the Acropolis with bronze weapons gleaming. The battle raged for months. Antiope fought alongside her husband against her own people. The conflict only ended when she died in the fighting, struck down by an Amazon spear. Theseus found comfort in his friendship with Pirithous, king of the Lapiths. These two became the ultimate buddy duo of Greek mythology. Their first meeting was actually a fight. Pirithous had stolen some of Theseus's cattle just to test his reputation. When they met face to face, both were so impressed with the other that they became blood brothers instead of enemies. Together, they went on wild adventures that would make modern action movies look tame. They helped fight the centaurs at Pirithous' wedding when those horsemen got drunk and tried to kidnap the bride. They sailed with Jason and the Argonauts in search of the Golden Fleece. Wherever there was danger and glory to be found, these two showed up ready for action. Their friendship led to increasingly crazy schemes. Both men were widowers now, and they decided they deserved divine wives. Not just any goddesses, they wanted Zeus's daughters specifically. Theseus claimed Helen of Sparta. Yes, the future face that launched 1,000 ships. She was only 12 at the time, so they hid her away to wait until she was old enough to marry. But Pirithous had an even more ambitious target. He wanted Persephone, queen of the underworld and wife of Hades himself. Most people would laugh at such a ridiculous plan. These two actually decided to march straight into the realm of the dead and demand she divorce her husband. The journey to the underworld was a one-way trip for most mortals. Hades welcomed them with false hospitality, inviting them to sit and rest. The moment they touched the stone chairs, they became trapped. The seats fused with their bodies, holding them prisoner in the land of the dead. There they sat, unable to move, while the Furies tormented them for their arrogance. Theseus might have stayed there forever, if not for Hercules. During his 12th labor, the mighty hero found them in their stone prison. He managed to pull Theseus free, though chunks of flesh stayed stuck to the chair. Piritaus wasn't so lucky. He remained trapped for eternity. Some say that's why Theseus always had trouble sitting comfortably afterward. Back in Athens, things had gone from bad to worse. The Dioscuri, Helen's twin brothers, had invaded to rescue their sister. They'd also freed Helen and captured Theseus's mother Aethra as revenge. The people of Athens were growing tired of their king's constant adventures. They wanted a ruler who actually stayed home and ruled, not one who kept disappearing on dangerous quests that brought trouble to their doorstep. Theseus returned to Athens a changed man. His time in the underworld had left him weak and bitter. The confident hero who once slayed the Minotaur now struggled with doubt and paranoia. Age was catching up with him, and younger heroes were making names for themselves. The glory days seemed to be slipping away like sand through his fingers. His personal life became a disaster zone. He married Phaedra, Ariadne's younger sister, in what must have been the most awkward family reunion ever. Phaedra was beautiful and young, but she carried the curse of her bloodline. The gods hadn't forgotten how Theseus had abandoned her sister on that distant island. Revenge was coming, and it would arrive through the most unexpected channel. Phaedra fell madly in love with Hippolytus, Theseus's son by the Amazon queen. The young man was devoted to the goddess Artemis and had sworn an oath of chastity. He wanted nothing to do with his stepmother's advances. When Phaedra confessed her feelings, he rejected her completely. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, especially one with divine grudges backing her up. Phaedra decided if she couldn't have Hippolytus, she'd destroy him instead. She told Theseus that his son had tried to rape her. The king flew into a rage without even questioning the story. He called upon his father Poseidon to punish the young man. The sea god sent a massive bull from the waves that spooked Hippolytus's horses. The prince died in the resulting chariot crash, dragged across the rocks until he was unrecognizable. Only after his son's death did Theseus learn the truth. Phaedra, consumed by guilt, hanged herself and left a letter confessing everything. The hero who had once navigated the labyrinth couldn't find his way through the maze of his own family's destruction. He'd killed his innocent son and driven his wife to suicide. The great Theseus was becoming a tragedy instead of a triumph. The people of Athens had seen enough. Rebellions broke out across the kingdom. Noble families who had once bowed to the hero king now openly challenged his authority. They pointed to his long absences, his foreign wives, and the chaos that seemed to follow him everywhere. The man who had once united Athens was now tearing it apart. A young politician named Mnestheus led the opposition against him. This guy was smooth, smart, and knew exactly what the people wanted to hear. He promised stability instead of adventure, peace instead of constant warfare. The Athenians ate it up like honeycakes at a festival. They formally exiled their former hero, sending him away from the city he'd spent his life serving. Theseus fled to the island of Skyros, where King Lycomedes had once been his ally. The old king welcomed him warmly, or so it seemed. But Lycomedes had his own reasons for getting rid of the famous hero. Some say he feared Theseus would try to claim his throne. Others believe he was simply tired of housing a has-been who attracted trouble like a magnet attracts iron. The end came suddenly and without glory. Lycomedes invited Theseus to walk along the high cliffs overlooking the sea. They climbed to the highest point, where the wind whipped their clothes and the waves crashed far below. There, with no witnesses around, the king gave his guest a helpful push. Theseus, the hero who had survived monsters, mazes, and the underworld itself, died from a simple fall onto the rocks. Some versions claim it was an accident, that Theseus slipped on the wet stones, but most Greeks believed it was murder, plain and simple. The great hero's body was never properly recovered. It washed out to sea, becoming food for the fish he'd once sailed over in triumph. From slaying the Minotaur to becoming fish food, what a journey that was. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Theseus had spent his whole life being clever, finding solutions to impossible problems. He'd outwitted bandits, navigated labyrinths, and escape the realm of the dead. But in the end, he was undone by the simplest trap of all, trusting the wrong person. Even heroes, it turns out, can't solve every problem with strength and cleverness. His death marked the end of an era. The age of individual heroes was giving way to organized armies and political maneuvering. The Athens that Theseus had helped create would go on to become a mighty empire. But it would be built by politicians and generals, not monster-slaying princes. The labyrinth had been conquered, but the maze of human nature remained as twisted as ever. The story of Theseus shows us that even our greatest heroes are deeply flawed human beings. He saved Athens from the Minotaur but couldn't save his own family from tragedy. He conquered monsters but was conquered by his own mistakes. That's what makes these ancient stories so powerful. They're not just about gods and monsters, but about the very human struggles we all face. Modern psychology sees Theseus as a classic example of the hero's journey gone wrong. He achieved his great victory early in life, then spent the rest of his years trying to recapture that glory. Sound familiar? We see the same pattern in athletes, celebrities, and politicians who peak early and struggle to find meaning afterward. The Greeks understood that success can be just as dangerous as failure. Theseus lives on in countless movies, books, and video games today. Every time you see a hero navigate a maze, face an impossible monster, or make a tragic mistake that destroys everything they've built, you're seeing echoes of his story. The labyrinth has become a universal symbol for life's complexity, and the Minotaur represents the beasts we all must face within ourselves. What do you think? Was Theseus a hero or a cautionary tale? Should we celebrate his victories or focus on his failures? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the wild world of Greek mythology. Trust me, these ancient stories have more plot twists than any modern thriller.